We'll try to,
Got that covered.
Well, no,
And,
you
I don't want to be only 30 bucks a month. I have
so I can struggle.
Tough, right? Except that's not what you projected. Oh, yeah, it is.
Badged as the main information, any other considering their value. It's understandable that there wouldn't have been pretty much the same lens and shutter as was the AA, except the AA's was synced with flash, so there was no flash. 1947 through 48, which appears to be correct with the exception of the Delco. We really don't know when that was made, or more accurately, sold. All the features of all the cameras, the three labeling variants, are essentially identical. They all have a doublet lens of f7.9. There are 3 Waterhouse stops that are labeled cloudy, dull, and bright, or something like that, rather than the actual numbers. It's a non-collapsible lens mount. It's a single format. You no longer have 8 or 16 pictures in a roll. LaHue and Bailey's books have variation on the statement that the dies of the sold by Argus to a Pennsylvania company, which added a 3-speed shutter and renamed it the Cameo. The Argomania book mentions this statement and goes on to say, to its credit, that there is no definitive information to support this, which I agree.
And it has, any reference to Argus is blacked out.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the Camero, how it was, LaHue and Bailey say that it was sold mainly as a premium item, being a product that was sold in conjunction with another product, send in 2 Kellogg's Corn Flakes, and range from M 1,220 to M 13,421. And so with a regular distribution in that population, it suggests that a rough figure for production is about 13,000 cameras. This is much more in line with reality than 700 to 800,000, given the production facilities in the war. And if you've been looking for them on eBay, you know roughly how frequently they show up, which isn't very. So that's a good starting point in the wall. So that gives you a rough idea. There really and truly was a Camero Corporation. A little hard to see here, but this is my 2 Camero instruction sheets. Both have this on them, which is references the Camero Corporation of Hoboken, New Jersey. And I couldn't find much of anything about them on the web, but they did clearly exist. And they clearly named themselves after the camera, or excuse me, they named the camera after themselves. The interesting thing about the image in the instruction sheet is the logo. If you look closely at it, the letters are kind of connected to each other in a sort of cursive fashion. For those in the audience old enough to remember cursive writing. No example of Camero that I know of has the letters connected. They are all separate. So it suggests there's some nice rare variant out there to find for those looking for that sort of thing. Could just be artwork too, but you know, who doesn't want something new to find? But the fact that the camera was named after the company and the company represented itself makes it seem less likely that it was a premium camera to me. It seems like it was a primary product. One of the cameras that had an actual guarantee on it. They offered a 1-year unconditional guarantee on parts and workmanship, in contrast to the other cameras. All makes me think that the Delco was not was intended as a primary product to be sold directly under its name. So interesting point about these things, if you scratch a Minka or Delco, you will find a camera loop. This is something that Alexander Rawls pointed out to me when I started digging and asking around about these things. Something that I had not noticed. When you take the trim ring off of a Delco or a Minka, you will almost invariably find usually a painted over Camaro logo. I've seen very, very few that some of the Delcos at the highest end have a simply either an unpainted or an unlogoed front cap underneath the trim ring, but virtually all the other cameras you see have a Camaro logo either painted over or not. This is an example. The picture shown is an example of a Delco with a very low serial number for what that's worth, and the Camaro logo underneath it was not even painted out. They simply bolted the trim ring over and called it good. I know of two Delcos like this. I have one, and I think Tom has the other. But almost all the other cameras, they've gone to the trouble of actually painting out the Camaro logo. So that's kind of fascinating. And kind of to your point, Mike, that they might have all been intended. They started all up life as Delcos, as Camaros. It's unfortunate that you can't see this because it's a scatter plot. I do have my tablet here that you can see it better, and someone who can navigate tablets can get around to this slide if people want to pass it around. Basically what I did was put them in the serial numbers I had in an Excel spreadsheet, and make it as a scatter plot. So the serial numbers range from 100. The patent was said to have been filed March 3rd, 1947. Again, it's a shame you can't see it, but most striking about this illustration is the front lens housing cover. And on this shows it from the back behind, and you can see the bracket that's riveted on to the through the back that holds the front lens element in place, and it pretty much it's fixed in there. It's not removable. It's a unit. So where that becomes interesting is this is something that I didn't know until Curtis Riddick pointed it out to me, and that is that there were actually two varieties of the lens produced for this camera. The first one, this side and this side. This is the back and this is the front. And pretty much seen all the Camaros that I'm aware of have this design. And it's exactly like the patent illustration. There's this bracket that's riveted on and it holds the front element of the lens rigidly in place in the housing. The second design is pretty much exclusively found on Delcos and Minkas. The trim ring the front housing no longer has the lens front element riveted in. It's simply open in the middle, and they made a plastic housing to hold the front element, and it has these little ears with screw holes, so the whole thing can be both sandwiched together when assembled to the camera. So it, again, given the fact that the Camaros look more like the original application, and the other cameras have this second design, it makes me think that the Camaros came along first, and were first, since that's what you found.
No, this is a pretty substantial change. I mean, if you were making, what did you say, 40,000 or so of these Camaros, would you be likely, to just change the design? You probably, you're probably not a company that's a real camera company that's doing it. You probably don't have a lot of design resources. This is a pretty big change. Something you would only do if you had to, I would think. And so does that mean that there were possibly two companies making this thing? The Camaro, and then somebody else takes it over and says, oh no, this design is no good, fix it. And then do it once more, or something like that.
That's as valid a hypothesis as any, given the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, just
Well, I mean,
yeah, that's possible
again,
too.
a free country, there's any manner of conjecture. You gotta think that on a $10 camera, the margin is pretty small. So
Right.
if they found out they made 10,000 of these and they decided that this was problematic for some reason, and they came up with this design that saved them 14 cents on every camera, that might have been substantial enough. If they were having a lot of problems, if the lens elements were breaking every time they tried to rivet it to
We
the
would have to,
thing.
no, maybe there's the thing.
Again.
This is the kind of deal that just the tooling cost is gonna overcome the efficiency in manufacture later on, I would think.
Well, you know, there's rich, fertile ground for speculation
Yeah.
there.
It's
Do
interesting,
you
it's very,
know whether the spacing is the same in the attachment holes?
Spacing,
If you look on the right, you see two holes for that retaining ring. And
Yeah.
in the bottom center, there are two holes.
so these
Right.
guys here.
Yeah, is that spacing the same as this different
Well,
assembly?
spacing is kind of a relative term here. I mean, this is being held on by rivets. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you know, the tolerance of the rivets essentially generates the spacing. This, I guess, would, in order to get the same, you know, you could position the lens element in this housing in such a way that it would overcome any difference in thickness posed by the ears that hold it in place. That would be my first, off the top of my guess, speculation. I mean, it still has to work. I can't believe they re-engineered a double-up lens design to accommodate a new thing. So,
Well, that's not my question. At least, I'm not hearing the answer to your question. The holes that attach to the retaining ring, the rivet, is the width between those holes the same as the width between the mounting holes on this new lens? Is it,
I've got the
does it look
things.
like a production line that says, take out the old guy, put this new guy, and the same holes are the same?
okay, here would be Exhibit A if I
Right.
was trying to figure this out. Note that this Delco is attached to a camera housing that has the riveted. In other words, this is the first design lens, and this Delco trim ring is mounted through the same holes. So unless they made two sets of Delco trim rings, it would suggest that the spacing is the same. It would also require, if they for some reason decided to change the spacing, they'd have to change the molding of the camera. That would seem to take it out of the economical change reason, unless there was some vastly significant reason to do it. That's the best I got, quite frankly. I have never measured it. We've got examples out there we can measure later to answer that question better.
well, just to go back to, if I've got the camera, it's got the faceplate, the lens element riveted on. Then I go to the subsequent model with the plastic piece and the little nubs and so on. That's also riveted, that's also riveted.
No, the screws go through that, through those
Okay,
holes.
okay. So if you were anticipating putting that faceplate on, would, you know, this new lens mounting with the screw holes and so on, make it easier, better somehow to put the new faceplate on? In other words, it's not the lens design that's driving it, it's the faceplate design that's driving it.
Yeah, the thickness of the rivets would make the new trim ring bolted over the old camera logo kind of clumsy.
Right.
That would introduce some spacing.
Right.
So yes, I think that is one very possible motivation for doing that.
Yeah, in other words, if you weren't gonna put the new faceplate on, you just leave the design like it was.
Exactly. So, these are the instructions for all three cameras, copies that I have, as noted. The Minca, the left to right there, the Minca, the Camero, and the Delco. The Minca and Camero are very, very, very similar. They're similar size, pretty much appear to have been printed by the same company. All three cameras' instruction manuals have the cameras, the images of the specific camera included with them. anytime they have pictures in which the camera appears, the correct camera is referenced. All the pictures that don't show the camera are identical. They're clearly were used on all three sets of instructions. As noted, the two Camros that I have show Camro Corporation. All the Minkas I've ever seen reference Argus Incorporated, and all the Delcos I've ever seen reference Deluxe Products of Chicago. The text in all of them is identical across all the cameras. Everything, all content of text, other than the names of the cameras, is identical. On the back, what is nominally the back page of these instructions, the Camro and Minka are very similar. They both have a part number reference. The part number is 19152 on the Camro and 19164 on the Minka. The Minka, in addition, has what looks to be a date stamp or reference printed on it, which is something I know I've seen on other Argus paper of the 40s and 50s. It says, this case, it says 9/47, which suggests September 47, in line with when these cameras were produced. They both have the same printed in USA. So it suggests that the same source was used for printing the Minka. Delcos appear on a different size and stock of paper. Again, they've got the same text, the same illustrations that don't show the camera logo. But generally, other than that, the actual camera, other than this logo or this picture, which looks like artwork to me in contrast to these two, which look like photographs, the photographs in the Delco that show the camera and its logo, the logo has sort of been obscured. Looks like post-production meant. So that's the instructions. The back of the instructions also shows some differences. These on the camera on the left here, these two pictures actually show the logo of the camera, and they've got a picture of a man holding the camera, showing how to take landscape and portrait pictures. When you get to the Minka, they used a woman as the model, and she's basically holding the camera in the same way, but it's obviously a different person.
So that'd be different. Is the person?
If you look at the Delco has the same image as the Argus, the Minka, I used to say the Argus, but the logo has been obscured. And that is the case with the Delco instructions. Their images match the Minkas and are different from the Argus. Different from the Camro. So these are the only advertising references or publicized references to the camera. First of all, I would say that I have never seen any kind of primary advertisement, camera dealer advertisement, or any other printed reference to the Delco camera. Never seen them for sale. Would love to see them. If anybody has one, I'd love to know about it. But what I've found, looking through camera magazines, these are all these examples are from Popular Photography magazine. In about September or October of '47, you start to see not primary advertisements, but listings of large camera retailers who advertised in those magazines. And the first one I find that I can actually identify a date is October '47. It's for this Broadway camera company in New York that sold cameras, and at the top of their listing of cameras is the new miniature Argus Camro 828. And there are several of the retailers that list the Camro. They all list Camros. Some of them refer to it as the Argus Camro 828, and some of them just the Camro 828. But again, they appear in October, starting in October, and they last through the end of 1947. Not sure
Just
what.
quick, close program.
Not sure now. All I got to do is navigate to that. So that
That's-
should. the
Just hit spacebar.
Something I've not been able to get rid of.
Little folks, escapes for that. Bingo. All right. So, the Minka, the first reference I have found to the Minka in these publications is the December 1947 issue of Popular Photography, in which there is a Argus advertisement, full-page ad, lists pretty much the full line of cameras they have, including the Argus Minka. This is in the December 1947 issue. In February of 1948, Popular Photography had a column called Trade Notes and News, and it was pretty typically the place where new products were introduced by the manufacturers. They would say, we got this coming. They let the editors know, and the editors would include the text that the company's publicists sent out. And here it is, referencing the new Argus Minka 28 camera. So, cameras have been on the dealer shelves early enough to be advertised in 1947. The Minka isn't being introduced as a new product until February 1948. So, this is kind of interesting.
And that's consistent with the serial numbers and so on, but why, they both seem to be Argus products fill in these contexts, right? This says Argus here, and the camera was an Argus, or seemed to be. So, why would you change the name like that? And not change anything else?
Why indeed? Well, as seen from the instruction sheet, Camera was an actual company.
Okay,
So,
sorry.
if you're going to
Camera
sell
was
it
an
as a
actual
Camera, you gotta be Camera.
Right, okay.
It's certainly reasonable that Camera could have sold cameras made by Argus, much like Montgomery Ward sold
Right,
the Ward
right,
plates.
right,
And
right.
there wasn't any particular attempt made to disguise the fact that that was an Argus. The Minkas in Europe in 1939, were pretty obviously Argus cameras,
Right.
but they were sold under a different label. So, best guess is that it was known to be an Argus, but sold as a camera. Again,
Okay.
this is, ain't got much to work with here, but,
Conjecture.
you got a different idea, make your own PowerPoint.
It'd be interesting to know who was on the boards of directors of all those companies.
Right.
You know what's curious though?
Right.
If you look on, you're lucky enough to have an example with the little logo that's on the left side of the camera intact. If you I've had to glue some back on. The material is the same on the camera and the Minka, or the camera and the Argus logo that came off of the camera. It's made of the same material, and the script is almost exactly the same. And it fits.
And you gotta
In that-
think that
in
something
that
like
area.
that, you gotta think that something like that was an external supplier. It's hard to believe that either company would have made those in-house.
Yeah, it would, but the design is the same.
Right.
And much like the instructions, probably outsourced to the same company, would be my guess.
Mm-mm.
Again,
Yeah, it's.
I make no claims of
Puzzlement.
absolute victory. Yeah, but
Puzzlement.
yes, it very much, and again, considering the price range, general endorsement from a Hollywood star.
Is there any evidence that Argus was the actual manufacturer of the camera used?
The mold mark on all the cameras, including the Model M, is Reynolds molded plastic, consistent with the Model A, the early Model C series cameras. The other C series cameras have mold marks from other companies. In other words, Argus didn't make a heck of a lot of their own stuff. They outsourced an awful lot of it. All their bodies were made by other companies, manufactured by other cameras, assembled by Argus. So They were, to some extent, and after the war, certainly, possibly even before the war, they made their own lenses. After they bought Graf, once they got trained lens grinders in-house, they were actually manufacturing lenses. But a lot of the other stuff they didn't make. So, and, you know, the essentially identical nature of these things and the fact that, you know, most of them are cameras suggests that there was probably one big batch made.
So you can conjecture that Argus Design, who had the Bowles designer built to that company did, figured out the economic price going on a production run and said, we can get a really cheap price for $50,000, but I don't think we can sell 50,000. Camera, would you like to label and use that part of our production?
I think the key word in your statement is conjecture. This is conjecture from
Yeah.
start to finish. You know, again,
But there's no evidence they ever did that before.
well, Wardflex, because, you know, they did clearly make cameras for other companies in the course of their business. Yeah, I mean, the jury's gonna be out on this one for a long time, because there's gonna be, just like this room,
There's
there's
gonna
gonna
be
be
written
lots.
record
Yeah, exactly.
of the business arrangements.
But this
The
sounds to me
acquisitions.
like one of the more likely possibilities. You know, if they made it to somebody else.
As far as the Delco, just not a heck of a lot known. You know, we know that the distributor was Deluxe Products, but we don't know when. Never have found any records to show when it was made, where they were sold, how they were sold. No known advertisements, no camera store listings. Again, anybody in the room seen a advertisement, camera store listing, anything for a Delco? I never have, and I've tried and tried and tried.
Where did
One
this
thing,
one come from again, Phil? Is this?
I'm sorry, where did what?
This oil, this image of the actress?
Comes from the box.
From the box.
And get to that in a second. Deluxe Products was a Chicago company. And it occurred to me in the production of this that perhaps they might have intended to sell it through Marshall Fields, a big retailer headquartered in Chicago. I haven't been able to find anything, but that's a late-breaking guess. But you know, it's possible they might turn up in Marshall Fields catalog. Mike Reitzma came up with a couple of internet references to Diana Florey, the Hollywood starlet, whose Mona Lisa smile only intensifies the mystery behind the Delco 828. He found a 1951 entry in a Chicago area newspaper that said that Diana was had acted in various local theater productions and also Florida theater circuit, and was scheduled, she had been recommended for the second lead in a Hollywood movie production that was coming up. This was, I think, February of '51. And so this was something that was coming up. So again, 1951, she is clearly an emerging Hollywood starlet. I don't know what the shelf life is on Hollywood starlets. What, you know, how long? I don't think it's very long.
That's on Wikipedia.
And but in any case, 53, it shows that she was doing some TV acting and more theater, but doesn't say anything about being a Hollywood starlet at this point. So really, you know, this is about, but it does, the fact that she was going to, you know, she had been tabbed for a possible role in a Hollywood movie in '51 suggests maybe the Delco didn't reach market until later on. The Delco sat on it for a while, possibly waiting for those ornate boxes.
Yeah.
The fact that Diana came from Chicago, you know, it's a local talent agency might have provided her to be the spokeswoman, the image.
Well, maybe
But
they had a
we don't
movie
know
about
much.
Godzilla eating Chicago, and she was the star.
That's right.
Now, Phil, if she was kind of a minor starlet, going back to your Marshall Field conjecture, it would kind of make sense that you would get a Wolf person to do the image for the camera, because she wouldn't have been known in San Francisco, let's say, but in Chicago she would be known, and she would probably be maybe even well known, and so therefore it could be an appropriate marketing vehicle for a local market, but not for a national one.
That's certainly possible. That's entirely possible. There's one other incarnation that this camera appears in, and that is the, once again, mysterious no-name camera, as they're frequently called. And it's a really odd thing. You find them pretty commonly with this box, which looks similar to yet different from the camera box in terms of the coloration. It's got the yellow box with the red logo. You notice that the Camro and the Minka boxes, in terms of overall design, kind of resemble each other more. They are virtually identical, including these lines, these stylized lines. Minka, they simply changed the color to blue. They also, the name of the camera here, Camro 28 camera and Minka 28 camera, has a rather stylized font. It's kind of hard to see here, but we've got boxes in the other room we can look at. If you look at the word camera here, it's a much more generic font on this box. They also, every place these alleged names appear has been rather dramatically blacked out, and they include this statement, name of nationally known make deleted. They went going to great trouble to say that, you'd recognize this name in an instant, but we can't tell you what it is. The instructions, which are identical to the Minka instructions, except for the fact that every place the name Minka 28 appeared has been carefully excised, and it looks like it's not like it was scratched out or whited out or something on the printed. It's very clean, as though it was the printer plates where this occurred.
Yeah.
So they presumably went back to the same supplier that the Camro and Minka instruction sheets came from, got them to make this redaction, took out the logo on the top of the camera, but you can still see the Lumar lens writing on that. Again, other than this, there's no part number on the back, but other than that, it's identical to the Minka. Interestingly enough, on the Delco box, this, once again, hard to see, but this writing appears on the box of the Delco, when the fancy Delco box came out. It says, precision made by one of America's foremost nationally advertised camera manufacturers. The same kind of broad hint that you recognize this company in an instant, we can't tell you who it is. Makes me think that these were Camros on their way to becoming Delcos. Delco wanted to get the box, their fancy box going, but until they did, they had these made up so that they could get something out to the world, get something on a shelf being sold. Not many of these found.
Well, I have a no-name box that instead of it blacked out, it's been cut out. Wow.
That's interesting.
That's
Cleanly cut out? Was it?
Well, it looked like it was done by hand. And then the yellow layer, the yellow paper, it's that was like ply on top of the hardboard, and it was just ripped off because underneath, where the adhesive would rip off, it looked like it took part of the hardboard with it, so it's rough, and it's not real square. Looks like it had been, excised by hand.
Okay, so this appears pretty much on all four sides and the top. Was it that way on
Yes.
all four sides?
All
and the
four
top?
sides and the top.
That's fascinating. Yeah, well, just one more mysterious layer to the whole story. And, you know, again, that could be before they got these guys printed up. They may have gone to an even cruder thing to get it. Who knows? And I don't know, you know, I'm starting to wonder really whether there was a name under here. If they just wanted to go to the trouble to suggest that it was a nationally known camera, they might have just had these boxes made up
Well, I think
without the
Probably
the
a
lines.
marketing campaign.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah, could be.
It could have been done by anybody.
Power of suggestion, you know, the fact that it wasn't quite the same and the lettering was the same, you know, who knows? So that's the no name. So from all of this, my current hypotheses are as follows. The Camro was the first camera made, or the first camera to reach the market. And the fact that the serial numbers are the earliest, the ads are the earliest, and the camera logo appears on all the faceplates suggests all this to me. And furthermore, suggests that the entire run was originally intended to be cameras. That for whatever reason, Argus was making this for Camro to sell, that they felt that they were going to get 50,000 cameras to go with. Then the Camro disappears from the scene. And, you know, from the serial numbers and so forth, and the marketing, the timing of the publication, it suggests to me that the Minca camera was the next. And in as much as this was, you know, Argus's patent, Argus's mold suppliers and so forth, does suggest that Argus made the camera from the start. But I'm thinking that perhaps Camro went out of business, got mad, didn't want to buy the rest of them, didn't like the new lens design, whatever. And Argus sort of found themselves stuck with a bunch of cameras. Decided to put trim rings on it with their own name. They used the Minca name before the war, so they had it lying around. And it occurred to me, too, that they probably had the Model 75 as a design for a cheap camera in their line on the drawing boards or under concept at this point, but they didn't have any yet. They didn't have any other cheap camera in their line, so perhaps they thought of this as an opportunity for an inexpensive camera as something of a bridge. 75. Pure 100% conjecture there. But one idea. In any case, they clearly, for the argument, for the advertisements, for the new product announcements, Argus clearly sold Mincas under their name. Whatever the arrangement with Camro was, whether, you know, maybe they did intend to both sell it, allow Camro Corporation to sell it as a camera, and they were going to sell it themselves as Minca, and maybe they gave Camro a head start just to get the along. In any case, it appears that unlike what the publications say, that it really was starting out as a camera and not as a Minca. And then the Delcos.
That's a little like the clamps on.
Why is it all the same gold?
It has none of the wires.
Well,
It's intended to attach to the wires.
Because there was one batch made.
But it's bright enough for somebody to see you.
Test.
So I tried that, and that worked perfectly, except the light.
Usually I have problems talking to because I don't usually use application. I'm about the only reader at church that doesn't need the microphone to read give the epistle or the gospel. Yep.
Really isn't bad. Now, if you get a design package, if you get a design package, but that's assuming it works. Because they know it's a check the plan if they're outside the design package.
you word it.
I've been here since this morning. Yeah, I've been I remember responding too well. How was he saying coming? He was a little, she clear. I thought you were.
I brought another card. I want to record on that card.
Cut in, you can cut in views from the previous presentation you didn't use. The same people.
Yeah, be the same people.
Moving around though, you might change seats.
Yeah.
Keep rolling, you can let me know. Interesting how technology always seems to work.
Well, it's like on Monday night, I was checking the camera, my digital that I brought, and was gonna erase everything, and then it's to brick the SD card at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Okay, welcome back, and this will be the second presentation at the Argus Collectors Group here Friday afternoon. Bond's going to take us on a little trip called The First Bricks, and the subtitle is A Short Survey of the First American 35mm Cameras. And then after that, we'll take a short break, and we'll move down to the exhibition hall, and we'll do our display walkthrough. Bond?
Okay, well, you know, when you think of 35mm camera, the first thing you think of is Leica. Oscar Barnack produced the original Leica A 1924. And actually 35mm started a lot earlier than 1924. As a matter of fact, the first 35mm camera using the film format that we use today was made by George P. Smith. It was handmade, and Mr. Smith was from Missouri, and in my limited ability to search and find, that is all I have found out about him. I haven't even been able to find out where the camera is located now. I thought it more than likely would be in the Kodak collection, but there's no listing in the Kodak collection. The frame size was what we use today, 24 by 36. And as kind of a generalization, it looked, all of the early 35s used the same shape of camera. And they used actually I think 35mm was invented to utilize the leftover ends from motion picture movie stock, you know, the movie stock. I just found out the other day, I was reading through something else, and I found out who the inventor of the format that we use today. And Thomas Edison invented it was someone else that was working for him, invented the exact film format we use, the width and the sprocket sprocket spacing, and he developed it for his kinematograph. It was a projector that a coin-operated projector that had motion pictures on.
Bob, where did you say this picture came from?
Today's price is $750. The production was really limited. There are 6 known to exist. It really wasn't, I think it was something that they built to utilize the ends of film. The Simplex Photo Company was a manufacturer of movie cameras. So you can see the complexity is about the same as they focused the film plane. It had some modern features for a camera of its day. It had a self-capping guillotine shutter, focal plane shutter, speeds of 1/40th to 200th. The shutter release was located on the upper right side, and I presume I haven't decided what they mean by upper right side. If you look at the two sides where the viewfinder is, I guess is the bottom of the camera. But I would imagine the shutter release is right there, or it could be there. I'm not certain. I've never really handled one. The wind lever is in the center of the camera, and that's that lever right there. And when the shutter, when the lever was rotating clockwise, it advanced the film, advanced the counter, and wound the shutter all in one. It was playing action was attached to the peep sight, so it would compensate. And it had a field of view. It would compensate for as you rose and lowered the film or the lens board. It would compensate. It would show you the view you're going to get.
Simplicity is always.
The $150 in the day, and that works out to about $1,500.
You get the earlier date too.
Well, mine, I didn't get an instruction with my particular example. I guess the confusion arises due to an 1970 GAF letter contending that the introduction is 24, and the first known instance of actual advertisement for it appeared in the camera in 1927. According to Jack Naylor, in a new look at the old 35, the memo was basically a wooden box, and it advanced as you advanced through or walked around. The film advance was quite novel. It's actually a button on the back of the camera that you push up and down, and it actually advances the film exactly like a motion picture camera does. And I think most of the early ones, when you push the button down, it engages two claws in the sprockets and actually pulls the film down.
Was that a self-cocking shutter?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was available with little cartridges that held 50 exposures. And sort of camera.
What are these things going for right now?
I paid, well, I didn't pay, my wife, somewhat over $400 for this is a picture of my camera. It's the Boy Scout version.
Oh, yeah.
They're on eBay right now between $750 and $800. The other cameras are somewhat more reasonable, somewhere hovering around $100 or $150. The next camera up is called the Ellison camera, and it's the era. It makes taking verticals interesting because of the way you have to hold the camera to release to frame.
I guess there's not too many of these left in the world either, huh?
I've only seen 4 on eBay.
Oh, so they are coming up on eBay.
Yeah, and 2 of them were broken. They were just pieces.
What do they go for?
I can't remember. They're around. I think I paid around $75 for mine.
That's pretty good.
I did see one in Europe for over $200. Let's see here. The lens was an F5 Wollensak Cinevilo Stigmat. Really fancy name for a simple. And if you, I have peeked inside. I haven't ever been able to get one apart yet. But I peeked inside, and I don't know how it ever really worked. And that usually caused the crank to break. But quite a few of the Ellisons, curiously, have the crank intact. I kind of think that it was the variety of pot metal that was used to cast it. Pot metal being crummy stuff anyway, it didn't hold, it wasn't very strong.
But since the
But
cranks-
none, I have never encountered one of these cameras that the shutter works.
Right.
They have all jammed.
So the shutter stopped working before the crank broke.
Yes, but curiously, out of this camera, I recovered it when I got it and was looking at the, checking it out. I opened one of the film cards at the time, was looking for something to utilize the ends of film. The QRS company at this time built movie cameras and movie projectors, and I think the name is still QRS. Became the QRS DeVry Corporation, and we have now, they went into electronics and education, and they're still around today. Curiously, the Ellison failed. QRS bought it. Why, I don't know. This is the camera is a smaller version of the Ellison, and it's made out of a little different material. Everybody says it's Bakelite, but it's not. It's actually phenolic, and phenolic is a resin that is strengthened with bits of cloth, and it looks like marbling, but you can actually see the cloth bit, the weave of the cloth in the phenolic. And it's actually stronger than Bakelite because of the extra fill.
It was primarily used in
Circuit boards.
circuit boards and radio manufacturing for
Yes.
coil forms.
Mm-hmm.
So Bakelite must have been.
The most prevalent lens available with it was an f7.7 Wollensak fixed focus. But the optional lenses included a 40 millimeter f5 Wollensak Ellison Hollywood lens, an f7.7 graph lens, and a focusing f3.5 graph lens. I have seen, there's one on eBay right now in Germany, and it's priced at $200, which I haven't been able to swing yet.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that Argus bought graph, and what was the first lens they made? F3.5.
Right.
We'll have to get a hold of Diana Flores and tell her.
It uses exactly the same shutter. As a matter of fact, on the shutters that the ones that I have, it does say Ellison Hollywood on the shutter, so they bought the shutter boxes. The camera was designed to take 40 exposures in a daylight loading cartridge of a somewhat different design, made because they're smaller than the Ellison. And the camera brochure, which I have, it touts that you could take 40 pictures in 40 seconds. So you could use it, as a sequence camera. You really have to crank and be awful lucky. For quite a while before we got what we know as the brick today, which is the Argus C, that was released in 1938, and used the Kodak film cartridge, which was the first American camera that used, the 35 that used the 35 millimeter cartridge. So that's my presentation. Thank you. I found it interesting, and I stumbled into that to expand my collection there when I got the Ansco.
Now, the very first one that you showed, Bob,
Mm-hmm.
What was again the name of the maker?
There is George Smith,
George Smith.
George P. Smith. I have wiki, or searched, Googled his name, and I find no references.
You find billions of references.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, but
As a
no,
camera
nothing,
designer,
nothing back.
patents or anything like that.
No patents. I have a feeling if you look at the pictures of the two, of the Smith camera
Yes.
and the Simplex camera,
Yeah.
they are quite similar. And I have a feeling that Smith sold that design to Simplex. But from what I read, that the Simplex camera, it was a viable product. It wasn't just a cobbled together.
Yeah.
The vague references I have that it was much similar to the Simplex.
No, on the QRS, how often, they don't come up functioning obvious. How often do they come up on eBay?
They came up, well, I purchased mine, and I guess it was a blooming. There were quite a few. I don't think I've seen one on eBay for about 6 months,
So, possible.
except for that, the one in Germany that is, way out of my league.
Have you ever seen the one with the graph, 3.5 lens?
No, and that one in Germany has the focusing lens.
I'd be interested to look.
I have all of the other examples.
Is it a 50 millimeter?
I don't really know. I've seen references to a 40 millimeter,
Okay.
but I'm not. There's none of them are marked as to the focal length.
Thanks, Vaughn. Let me just do a little review of what we're going to do next. We'll adjourn here and go down to the exhibition hall, and we'll do the walkthrough. So it'll take Wesley a few minutes to disconnect and reconnect, and we'll broadcast that also. What we do there is we're going to start with the wall. We'll go down to the right of the wall along that edge, and then into the middle and over on Tom's splash display in that area. And everyone gets like 2 to 5 minutes just to say, here's my display and here's what it's about. And if you see me waving at you, that means your 2 to 5 minutes is up and we're moving on soon. Also wanted to review what's going on tonight. Dinner's at 6:30 at the Rio Grande. There are maps in the room, which you can see. And then also I wanted to mention tomorrow's photo shoot. We'll issue the film at, I think it's at 10 o'clock. You shoot between 10 and 1 and tune your film in. And there's going to be 2 contests this year. One contest has to do with whatever pictures you want to take in the community or wherever. The other contest is a contest of photographs of people using or holding or somehow associated with an Argus camera. So a person taking a picture, a person sitting beside them, a person bouncing one on their head, it doesn't matter. But there'll be 2 contests, so when we have dinner Saturday night, we'll be voting on 2 different contests. One, general photographs, and one will be a person with an Argus camera.
I'll be skimming a Black Sea 4 down by the creek. Anyone wants to try to catch that.
Okay, let's adjourn here and reconvene in 10 minutes or so in the hall.
Hey, Bob, I still have those, the PowerPoints on your machine. I just wondered if you could copy that. This is Curtis's chat. I want to give him a copy of that camera.
There are very few photos.
Wesley, can I take your power down here?
Usually it was happened to